Most people dread driving at night. They see the darkness, the emptiness, and feel a shiver of unease. Me? I used to live for it. I was the guy who'd wait until 11 p.m. just to hit the open road. The cooler air, the way the asphalt unwound like a private ribbon just for you. The feeling that the world was asleep and you were the only one awake in it. I found it deeply peaceful. The night was my confidant. That was before the night I spent at the inn. The night that taught me the most terrifying thing in the world isn't a monster, a ghost, or a demon. It's a memory you can't trust. My name is Omar, and this is the story of how I learned that some doors, once opened in your mind, can never be fully closed. My ordeal began unremarkably. I had finished some simple business with a friend in Taif. It was around 11:30 p.m. when the idea struck me to head home to Riyadh, a 6 to 7 hour drive, a perfect night drive. I said my goodbyes, filled my thermos with cold coffee, and set off. The first half hour was idyllic. The city lights thinned, then vanished, swallowed by the pure, silent dark of the desert highway. I was alone with my thoughts, which, as I'll admit freely, is a crowded place. I have a habit of talking to myself, of playing out little scenarios and dialogues. I was so engrossed in my own world, sipping my coffee, that I didn't notice the silence at first. No headlights in my rear view, no oncoming trucks, just me, the hum of the engine, and the vast, empty expanse of sand and rock under a moonless sky. My phone, ever the traitor, had no signal. It was just a useless brick in my cup holder. That's when the fatigue hit me. It came not as a gradual wave, but as a sudden, crushing weight on my eyelids. The car began to drift, the rumble strip under the tires jolting me awake for a second before I'd start to fade again. The coffee was useless. I knew I was fighting a losing battle. Just as I was about to give in and pull over, a sign emerged from the darkness, illuminated by my headlights. A service station with symbols for fuel, food, and most importantly, lodging. 5 kilometers ahead. A wave of relief washed over me, a place to rest. My relief was short-lived. A few kilometers later, a new problem announced itself. A low, rhythmic thumping from the rear of the car. The tire pressure warning light on my dashboard glared an angry yellow. I pulled over, my heart sinking. The rear tire was soft, losing air. It wasn't flat, but it was sick, enough to be a hazard at speed. I had no choice but to limp to the station I'd just seen advertised. The station, when I finally reached it, was a ghost. The fuel pumps stood silent and dark. The attached garage was shuttered with a heavy chain and padlock. My hope for a quick repair died. But then, my gaze was drawn to a structure set back from the main road, a 2- or 3-story building, old and dilapidated, with a single, sickly light burning by its entrance. A faded sign hung crookedly above the door, the Rose Inn. It looked forgotten by time, paint peeled from its walls like dead skin. The windows were dark, dusty voids. Every instinct told me to get back in my car and take my chances with the ailing tire, but the fatigue was a physical force pulling at my bones. I reasoned with myself. Perhaps it was a place for workers. Perhaps it was just old and hadn't been renovated. The light was on, so someone was there. I needed rest, just a few hours. I parked, grabbed my bag, and walked towards the entrance. The air grew colder with every step. Pushing open the heavy door, I was met with a musty smell, a strange mix of old incense and damp decay. To my right was a small reception desk. Behind it sat an Asian man, perhaps in his late 50s. He looked up as I entered, his face utterly devoid of expression. "Peace be upon you," I offered. He replied in a flat, mechanical tone, his voice as lifeless as his eyes. "And upon you." "I need a room for the night," I said. 100 rials, room 211, second floor. He slid a key across the dusty counter without making another question. Normally, I would have asked to see the room, but I was exhausted. I handed him the money, took the key, and turned to leave. His voice stopped me. "Do not go to the 3rd floor," he said, his tone unchanging. "Okay," I said, and headed for the stairs. The 2nd floor was a dim, narrow corridor lit by a single struggling bulb. Room 211 was at the very end. The room itself was Spartan. 2 beds, a small table between them, and a dresser with a large cracked mirror. The most prominent feature, however, was the lack of an air conditioner. Instead, an old rickety ceiling fan hung overhead, its blades still, looking like it might take flight or fall and decapitate me at any moment. The communal bathroom was down the hall. It was grim, but it was shelter. I switched on the fan, which whirred to life with a loud grinding noise that vibrated through the whole rickety frame, and lay down on the bed. I was just beginning to relax when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, and heavy. They echoed from the corridor, growing louder, closer, until they stopped right outside my door. I held my breath, staring at the door. There was a small peephole. I crept over and looked through. The hallway was empty, just the single buzzing light. Chiding myself for my paranoia, I went back to the bed. It was probably just a staff member, I thought. But the moment I closed my eyes, the sound returned. This time, it was accompanied by the faint jingle of keys, a metallic whisper right at my door. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. Again, I looked. Again, nothing. This went on for what felt like an hour. The pacing, the keys, then silence. I was frayed, my mind conjuring images of intruders. But exhaustion is a powerful drug. Eventually, the hypnotic drone of the faulty fan lulled me into a restless sleep. I don't know how long I was out. I was pulled from the depths of unconsciousness by a smell. Smoke, the sharp, acrid scent of burning wood. It was strong, pervasive, and coming from inside my room. I sat up, fumbling for the light switch. The room was as it was, but the smell of smoke was undeniable. I opened the window, letting in a blast of cold air, but the smoke smell lingered, stubborn and ominous. Then the sounds began in earnest. From the floor above, the forbidden 3rd floor, I heard it, a frantic, desperate sobbing, not a child's cry, but the weeping of someone in mortal terror. It was followed by the panicked pounding of feet running back and forth, and beneath it all, a low, crackling sound, the sound of fire. My mind raced. The smoke, the crying, the running. Could there be a fire upstairs? Were people trapped? My fear was suddenly at war with a sense of duty. I ran out of my room into the stairwell. As I climbed to the 3rd floor, the air grew palpably hotter. The sounds of panic became clearer. When I reached the top, I was faced with a heavy, solid door. Unlike the open access to the other floors, this one was closed. I pushed on it, but it was locked. I pounded on it, screaming, "Is someone in there?" The crying and running continued maddeningly close, but there was no answer. Defeated and more terrified than ever, I retreated to my room. The smoke smell was now thick, choking. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to make sense of it all. That's when I noticed the cracked mirror on the dresser. It was no longer just reflecting my terrified face. Words were appearing on its fogged surface, as if written by a finger from the other side. "Leave before dawn." A scream caught in my throat. I stumbled back, my legs giving way. The ceiling fan, which I had definitely switched off, began to spin slowly, creakingly on its own. The weeping from upstairs intensified, and then, from within the walls, I heard it, a cacophony of whispers. Dozens of voices speaking rapidly in a language I couldn't understand, arguing, panicking. It was a terrifying, inhuman symphony of sound. Panic took over. I fled the room, not even bothering to grab my things. I ran down the stairs, through the lobby, the reception desk was empty now, and burst out into the night. I scrambled into my car, locked the doors, and turned the key. The engine sputtered and died. The battery was dead, completely. I was trapped. I looked back at the inn. The single light by the entrance was flickering erratically. Desperation gave me a terrible, foolish courage. I couldn't fix the car. My phone was dead. My only source of help was back inside that building. I got out of the car and walked back into the inn. The lobby was now brightly lit, almost cheerful, but the reception desk was still empty. I called out, no answer. I climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. I reached my room, room 211. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The room was the same, yet different. The smoke smell was gone, the air was cold, but my belongings, which I had left on the dresser, were scattered on the floor. The cracked mirror was now clear, and written across it, in what looked like soot, was not just a warning, but a name, my family name. A wave of dizziness and pain crashed over me. My head throbbed with a blinding intensity. The whispers returned, but now they were in my head, screaming. The room began to dissolve, the walls melting into thick black smoke. I felt hands grabbing at me, pulling me back as I tried to run. I fought, I choked, I ran through a corridor that was no longer a corridor, but an inferno. The last thing I remember was reaching for something cold in the midst of the overwhelming heat, and then nothing. I woke up on the side of the road, my face pressed against the cold asphalt. The sky was still dark. I was disoriented, my head pounding. I was lying right next to my car. I scrambled to my feet, got in, and turned the key. The engine roared to life. I didn't look back. I floored the accelerator and sped away from that place. About 20 minutes down the road, I saw another service station. This one was alive with light and activity. A working garage, a convenience store, a mosque. I pulled in, my body shaking. An older man, a worker at the station, noticed my state and came over. "Peace be upon you, son. You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, concern in his voice. I told him, my voice trembling, about the flat tire, about the first station, about the inn. "The Rose Inn," I said. "I think there was a fire there. I heard people screaming." The man's face went pale. He stared at me. "The Rose Inn?" he repeated. "Yes," I said, pointing vaguely back down the road, about 20 kilometers back, on the right. He shook his head slowly, his eyes wide with a mix of pity and horror. "Son," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "that inn, it burned down 12 years ago. A whole family, the parents, 3 of their children, only the father and the 2 youngest survived. It's been closed ever since. A ruin. There's nothing there." I stared at him, the world tilting on its axis. 12 years? A family? And then, like a dam breaking, the truth flooded back. It wasn't a story I was being told. It was a memory, my memory. 12 years ago, I was 13. It was a school holiday. We were driving from Taif to Riyadh. My father, my mother, my 2 sisters, my baby sister, and me. Our car had a tire problem. We pulled into that station, the first one. The garage was closed, so my father, desperate and tired, took us to the only shelter available, the Rose Inn, room 211. I had started sneaking cigarettes. I was a stupid kid. I went into the communal bathroom to smoke one. When I was done, I didn't know where to put the still-lit butt. I went back to our room, heading for the window to throw it out. I must have dropped it. It rolled under a curtain against an old electrical socket. I remember a spark, a whoosh, and then chaos. Fire everywhere. The screams. My mother's face disappearing behind a wall of flame. My sisters. My father managed to save my baby sister and my older brother. He pulled them out. But my mother and my 2 other sisters, they died in that fire. Because of me. The man at the station was gone. The station itself was gone. I was standing alone on the side of the dark highway, my car idling beside me. I had been here all along. I never made it to the second real station. The 20-minute drive, the conversation, the revelation, it was all a waking dream, a desperate creation of my shattered mind to finally understand the truth it had buried for so long. The Rose Inn is a burnt-out shell, 12 years silent. But for me, it will never be silent. The whispers, the crying, the running, they aren't ghosts in a building. They are the ghosts in my head, the eternal screaming echoes of the night I killed my family. I don't drive at night anymore. The dark is no longer my friend. It's the place where my memories live, waiting for me to close my eyes.